What is gentrification? It is seen as a reinvestment in deteriorated neighborhood through renovation such as rebuilding old houses, beginning new business venture by opening new stores and introducing a new demographic so there can be a mix of people in the neighborhood.
With gentrification, we see positive impacts on the communities. One impact is job opportunities. In Kelly Anderson documentary My Brooklyn focuses on gentrification in downtown Brooklyn, Fulton Street Mall. Urban planners produce jobs with new business openings and construction jobs with renovating the neighborhood. Job opportunities are important in the economy we are in today. Gentrification improves amenities in the neighborhood and brings new amenities. In Lance Freeman's book, There Goes the Hood, a study of gentrification in the neighborhoods of Harlem and Clinton Hill in New York City, Freeman interviews people in the neighborhood to see their views on gentrification. People say that supermarkets have fresher produce. One person had sushi for the first time because of the Japanese restaurant opened near her home. In the film My Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn receives the first health food store. We also see a decrease of crime. In Freeman's study, residents say with more law enforcement, corners are clear and police respond to 911 calls in a timely manner. In the article, More Coffee, Less Crime, the relationship between gentrification and neighborhood crime rates in Chicago proves that with gentrification in areas with high crime, crime has declined throughout the years. With the new demographic of people and stores opening in the neighborhood, there has been a decrease in crime due to more law enforcement. Gentrification has increased the quality of life of people in these neighborhoods.
One of the major fears when neighborhoods are being gentrified is displacement. Displacement occurs when the rents are increased to new levels that the current tenants can no longer afford. Not everyone will be displaced, such as people that live in rent-stabilized apartments or in New York City housing. Those most likely affected are immigrants that have limited resources and legal support, as well as the working class and the elderly. In some cases, landlords of rent-stabilized apartments took advantage of loopholes in the Rent Regulation Reform Act of 1993 to increase rents when tenants move out. Feeney writes on how the city had to aid New York City tenants in paying their rents to prevent evictions, which would be costlier to the city. In 2005, $48 million were used to prevent these, and by 2013, this figure had gone up to $122 million. In Purcell's research on gentrification in New York City, he discusses the threat of gentrification and how it is on the culture and character of the neighborhood. This is notable in the closing of mom and pop stores and of local artisan shops that are replaced by large box generic stores. Many of the low-income tenants that were living in these neighborhoods prior to gentrification are also living on a fixed income, and the increase of these large box stores are not always affordable to them. Something as simple as buying a cup of coffee from Starbucks instead of from the corner deli has repercussions on the residents. The result of this higher cost of living was that working class people had to move out. On the other hand, these changes to the community attracted younger, wealthier professionals who could afford the higher rents and the cost of living changes. The cost of living changes the demographics and the feel of a neighborhood. Changes in demographics of a neighborhood can be a financial burden to longtime residents that can also lead to class divisions amongst the new and the old residents.
Certain areas in New York City have gone through gentrification, such as Harlem and various parts of Brooklyn, like Fort Greene, Park Slope, and Williamsburg. Kathy Newman and Elvin K. Wiley gathered interviews from people who were living in these areas in the 1990s. I took a look at the interviews to see what impact gentrification had on these residents who were living there way before the neighborhood was gentrified, and ultimately how it affected their lives. One of the areas in Brooklyn was the Lower Park Slope. This neighborhood was a mixture of older working class Italian families and people of Spanish descent. However, when the neighborhood became gentrified, Caucasians moved in and it became even more diverse. One woman who was a former tenant who is now a community organizer said that in the late 1990s, during the gentrification process, her then landlord doubled the rent. She was a tenant for 8 years when her rent increased from $750 to $1,200. She had neighbors who lived there for almost 30 years who experienced the same ordeal, a major rent increase. The interviewee said that because the landlord fixed up the building surroundings by making it appear more beautiful by planting trees, he made that a justification for the rent increase. At one point, Park Slope had affordable housing, according to Rose. She indicated that the Fifth Avenue Committee for 15 years made sure that Park Slope, Brooklyn had affordable housing for residents, but once the area was gentrified, it was difficult to maintain the same low rents to residents. Another area that has been gentrified in Fort Greene. This was a neighborhood that was predominantly black, but when it was gentrified, white middle to upper class people moved in. Spike Lee, a well known director, was recently on CNN talking to Anderson Cooper about his family experiences with the gentrification. He is from Fort Greene, Brooklyn. The house his father lives in is now worth $5 million, but he only paid $40,000 for it in the late 1960s, which he still lives in. Spike Lee indicated that with gentrification came along better police enforcement, a safe and clean environment, and his argument was why it took white middle class people to move in for impoverished neighborhoods to improve. His father's experiences with it is that the neighborhood has improved tremendously. However, his father is a jazz musician. He plays the he plays musical instruments. His black neighbors never had a problem with the loudness of his music, but his new white neighbors do. Spike Lee indicated that the cops had been called on his father on numerous occasions for playing loud music. The jazz music is a part of the culture of the neighborhood, and because it has a new demographic of people, the culture is slowly but surely changing.
Lo que va a pasar es que grandes compañías van a tomar el barrio, digamos aquí, van a tomar el barrio, van a tumbar los negocios pequeños, los edificios pequeños, los edificios y vivienda que es accesible, que es barata para la gente migrante. Desgraciadamente somos migrantes y creo que no tenemos suficiente poder económico como para ganar, digamos, mucho dinero aquí, y es por ello que no podemos también pagar rentas altas, rentas caras. Entonces este es nuestro hogar. Estados Unidos es un país que fue fundado por migrantes, entonces bueno, estamos aquí y creo que tenemos derecho a tener vivienda digna, a que se nos respete nuestros derechos, nuestra diversidad cultural y todo eso. Nosotros somos inspirados básicamente por los hermanos zapatistas. Movimiento por Justicia del Barrio trabaja y hace lo que se llama la democracia participatoria, la autonomía y la autodeterminación. Movimiento por Justicia del Barrio no tiene presidente, no tiene mesa directiva. Nosotros somos los que tomamos la decisión. Todo mundo tiene voz y voto. Cualquier decisión que se toma se hace de manera colectiva. Nadie impone nada. Aquí en Harlem tenemos graves condiciones de vivienda. Y más que nada la gente humilde y sencilla es la que se enfrenta a estos problemas. La organización se fundó a partir de todo esto. Básicamente la organización está conformada por gente que es afectada directamente, inquilinos que estaban cansados de malas condiciones de vivienda, aumento de rentas.
Unido, jamás será vencido. El barrio unido, jamás será vencido.
The battle between gentrification has always been whether it has positive or negative effect. Yes, gentrification is positive, but at what cost? It should not take white middle-class people to move in for this neighborhood to improve. In a Freeman study, one resident stated, I think it is more about class than race, and more about money. Gentrification affects the lives of people by creating social inequalities.